Hey, it's Matt, and I wanted to talk to you about Shogun, the mini-series from FX and Disney that just swept the Emmys in the United States last weekend. It won 14 Emmys at the creative arts portion of the awards, and then in the main portion of the awards, not only did Anna Sawai and Hiroyuki Sanada win Best Lead Actor and Actress, respectively, but the show itself won Outstanding Drama. So it's official. America loves Shogun. Now, I've been writing a lot about this recently. I did a op-ed, which is another name for a guest essay in the New York Times. You can read that in the link that I'm going to put in the description below. And I also did a big post about it on my newsletter. But I wanted to kind of sum up what my thoughts on it were and what the kind of cultural relevance of Shogun is today for you on this episode of the Pure Invention video podcast. So, Shogun is not new. And let me preface this by saying you don't even really need to have seen the show to appreciate what I'm going to be talking about here, because I'm not going to go into any detail about the characters or the plot or anything like that. I'm just going to be talking about kind of what it represents. And it represents a lot of interesting stuff. So as I was saying, Shogun is not new. It feels like a cutting edge drama because it's on everybody's minds right now and it won so many Emmys. But this miniseries is actually a remake of a 1980s miniseries by the same name. And that miniseries was the first interpretation of a book by the same name that came out in 1975. And that book was written by James Clavell, who's a very interesting character who fought in World War II, was captured, and spent many years in Japanese prisoner of war camps. And that's where he learned about Japan. I guess you could call it the hard way. And he took all of that knowledge and interest that he maintained in Japan. And I think it's actually really amazing that somebody who went through that, and it must have been pretty bad, because he actually wrote a memoir about it called King Rat. That's highly recommended if you're interested in that sort of thing. And he maintained his composure about Japan. He didn't hate Japan. It made him want to study it more when he got out. And so he wrote Shogun, which was a historical fiction novel set in the 16th century of Japan during what's known as the Sengoku Jidai, the era of warring states, which is a very real period in Japanese history. It lasted about a century, from roughly the entirety of the 1500s. And it was an era where warlords fought each other for dominance. And towards the end of that time period, they had basically set their designs on unifying all of Japan. And that's the background to where Shogun takes place. It's a real historical period, but a fictionalized story featuring many real historical people, but once again fictionalized for dramatic effect, which is really cool. I actually love both series. I love the book. I love the 1980s version, dated though it is, starring Richard Chamberlain and Toshiro Mifune. And I really thought the 2024 version, which was re-envisioned by a husband and wife team, Justin Marks and Rachel Kondo, and really updated for the modern time. I thought they did a great job. But once again, I'm not gonna talk about the actual story or plot or anything. I want to talk about more the bigger picture thing here. When you think about it, it's kind of strange that a series based on a book that was written in 1975 and that itself is based on a story from 1500s Japan would be so popular in modern day America. And in my New York Times essay, I came to the conclusion that the reason why we love Shogun so much isn't just because it's a well-done show, it is, but also because the idea of a really talented statesman slash warrior who is played by Sanada Hiroyuki in the series, who is trying to become shogun. The idea that there is this genius who can navigate a totally fractured world, which the era of warring states was, and put that world back together again, is pretty enticing for people in the modern era. We're living through not exactly an era of warring states, but an era of warring cultures. So I think that Americans are uniquely positioned right now to appreciate the idea of a civilization that is kind of coming apart at the seams, and Shogun portrays people navigating that and even triumphing in it. So my op-ed, which I hope you read it, is all about that. But I also want to talk about here something a little bit different, which is that Shogun has been praised for its accuracy in the portrayal of Japan. And it's true, it features Japanese actors and actresses. Most of it is spoken in archaic Japanese. The foreign characters are very much a minority. And the show used a lot of Japanese talent in the form of producers and consultants and things like that that give it a very different feel from most Hollywood fare set in Japan or dealing with Japanese subjects. Now, there was actually a kind of boom for medieval Japanese characters when I was growing up in the 1980s. It didn't necessarily focus on shoguns, even though there was that Shogun series in 1980. It focused on ninja, who are another character who was actually very active during that very same time period in Japanese history. And in the 80s, there was this huge boom, American Ninja, Ninja Exterminator, Revenge of the Ninja, Ninja 3, Domination. They all had these crazy titles, and they were these what you'd call chopsaki type flicks. And then, of course, you had the Mutant Turtles, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which in turn were a parody of Frank Miller's work in bringing ninja into Daredevil and Batman the Dark Knight and all sorts of things. And you actually still feel that influence today. The way Batman is portrayed in movies now owes a lot to the fact that Frank Miller re-envisioned him as a ninja instead of the detective that he had been up until that point. But we're getting a little bit away from the main point here. That stuff was great. I grew up on it. I loved it. But it was very much Japan as seen from the American gaze. What is really interesting about Shogun is not that it's necessarily historically accurate, because it's not, which isn't to knock the show. It's a drama. It's not meant to be a textbook. It's not that it's historically accurate, but it's very authentic. And what I mean is, Shogun looks like something that Japanese people might watch. It looks like a Japanese jidaigeki, which is the term for a period drama in Japanese. We have kind of synchronized now. Americans have caught up with Japanese tastes due to having consumed so much Japanese content, whether it's games, whether it's novels, whether it's movies. And so the way that Japanese see their historical period now is something we can consume in the modern day. And when you compare the modern 2024 Shogun to the 1981, one of the key differences is, in the 1980s, you needed a foreign guy, a white guy, to be the avatar for the audience moving through the story. So in the 1980 Shogun, whenever you see a scene of multiple Japanese people talking together in Japanese, nothing to do with foreign people, just having a conversation among themselves, they will very often cut to a scene of the lead character, Blackthorn, played by Richard Chamberlain, going, interesting, because they need to show us in there. Otherwise, the audiences of the 1980s would have gotten lost. You don't have that in the 2024 Shogun, because people are much more sophisticated about cultural differences these days. They don't freak out about hearing foreign languages. They've probably grown up, especially when it comes to Japanese content, on subtitled content, subtitled anime, subtitled movies. So it's not really scary to them to watch a movie or a TV series that is subtitled. And I really think Shogun shows just how far we've come in the West when it comes to appreciating other cultures. I can't think of any other series that has this much foreign language in it, that has these many foreign settings in it, and this much foreign history in it. So it's a really interesting thing to see how much the portrayals of Japan have changed between the 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and today. I wrote a lot more about this in my newsletter, the Pure Invention newsletter. I'll be putting a link in the description below as well, of course. And that's it for this time. I could go on and on and on about this. I'd love to go on and on and on about this, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. So if you enjoyed this, please comment below. I can come back and talk more about it with some very specific examples and other kind of angles on it. If you're interested, let me know. And if you're not, I'm going to be moving on to other topics as well. But thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe. The link's below. And it was really great talking to you again today. Catch you next time.